Welcome back to the Ancient Cosmic Clock. I'm Taylor Child.
I'm Brian Lang.
And today we're going to this is actually our first request video. Somebody asked us to talk about the Age of Taurus, which is an interesting subject for us.
So here we are.
So, whoever you are out there that requested it, this video is dedicated directly to you from us.
To you, Mark.
To you, Mark. And you'll also notice, also on the request line, somebody asked if we could figure out a way to make our faces take up more than 3 pixels on the screen. And I believe we have succeeded in that. Time will tell when this goes to publishing, but I believe we have succeeded. So that's great. So Age of Taurus. Let's talk about it a little bit. Now, this is the first curveball I wanted to throw at you about the Age of Taurus, because before the Age of Taurus is the Age of Gemini. And I'm not going to talk a lot about the Age of Gemini because we promised Mark that we would talk about the Age of Taurus. But Gemini is the word, okay? Gemini is the mouth. Gemini is speech. Gemini is communication and stuff. And since we're talking about the Age of Taurus and leading into the Age of Gemini, or leading into it from the Age of Gemini, I just wanted to start there and say, the beginning of creation, John chapter 1, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And out of this beginning of creation, out of this, unorganized matter, raw materials, however you believe the mechanics of creation worked, it starts with the Word. It starts with Jesus Christ, speaking the word and speaking creation into existence. At the end of the creation process, you have the sign of fixed earth, the Garden of Eden, this beautiful, the idea of the earth has become very solid and very, dense.
Materialized.
It's not just a spoken word anymore. It's here, now, Adam, meet Eve, go fulfill the first commandment, like we talked about that one time. Here we are in the garden, and it's this beautiful paradise.
A paradise like middle of spring, which Taurus governs. It is the fixed middle part of spring, and thus like one of the most beautiful times of the year in most places. And we have that archetype being that of the garden. And the garden would have been in that sequence of time.
Yeah, and so both the beginning of the garden and Adam and Eve exiting the garden would be within that, and the first, significant period of the history.
Yes, and I think one thing that's worth noting in those time frames is you have like Adam and Eve, and possibly even Noah in that time, and where it's starting to get out of the Age of Taurus. You have Abraham's story, the Joseph and Egypt story, all famine stories, where they have
the end of the age of...
It's after the age
of
Taurus, where you see Taurus isn't in its bloom anymore. And one thing to note, how long were they living in the Age of Taurus?
Well, according to Genesis, Adam lives for 900 years and some change. According to most accounts I've heard, Abraham lives for 180 to 100 years, depending on who you ask.
Which is kind of a big jump, because when we've gone into Abraham's time, he's not Taurus age anymore. He's not in the Age of Taurus anymore. But you see this waning of it to where their ages are dropping, and there's this longevity of Taurus. Taurus is the longevity. It's the one it's the ox.
That lasts a long time, yeah. Because it's not just Adam. You have Seth, you have Methuselah, you have Enoch, and I'm sure these are all out of order, but all of the ancient patriarchs lived, unfathomably long times by our standards.
Yeah, and what's interesting that I would like to point out is looking at the stars of the heaven and the stories that they're telling. I oftentimes like to pay more attention to what the stars are saying, what the narrative in the stars are saying, because if you're in our modern day, there is oftentimes subjects that come up on the news, and the reality of what Americans believe, or sometimes there's 2 different realities they're living in.
That is the truth.
Sometimes I'm just like, holy moly, like these people are swearing one thing and this other group is swearing in like an opposite truth. And I'm just like, it just boggles my mind how we can be so separate in what we believe is the reality of history, even in modern days. But going back to the Age of Taurus, like we get, and that's our biblical time where they were living longer and all that, right? As we said.
And where you have like some of the golden ages of mankind, like Enoch's city of Zion that was taken from the earth into heaven.
And there was some like beautiful things that happened during that age. So one thing to note with that is the stars are showing that longevity of Taurus, the orientation of the earth, where we have like some skeptics and people that criticize Christians for believing these like seemingly myths or fairy tales because they're nowhere like the age we're living in now. But like our stars are showing this. They're showing the concept of this longevity. To me, this gives me faith that like the Bible is more reliable than some may give it credit for.
Yeah, that's an interesting way to look at it. Because if you consider the age we're in now, which I kind of was agnostic when we talked about it, but the more I think about it, I'm pretty convinced that we are in the age of Aquarius. Mm-hmm. You know, if you even look at the glyphs for Aquarius, it's the wave, and that's like electromagnetic waves. Like never in the history of the world has there been more inundation with electromagnetic radiation of all types and varieties. You are hearing my voice through the power of electromagnetic waves right now.
And the archetype of Aquarius is social constructs. So,
yeah. So when we move from the Age of Taurus into the Age of Aries, you know, you're placing that around the time of Joseph in Egypt, where we're having famines and a reduction in the abundance and a reduction in longevity. And I would also add to it a religion that is more focused on sacrifice. You know, although the religion has always been focused on sacrifice because the first sacrifice was in the Garden of Eden by God himself.
And it brings in the idea of our Bible stories where it once again is, if you go to Joseph again, which we've talked about before, he brings up the idea of number 7 with the cow, and that being that end of that, having that age having ended. 7 being Saturn, it being retraction, it being taking away the cow, the abundance, bringing that in, is once again a really good tool for understanding really what was happening with the Age of Taurus, the abundance, and sometimes it was overabundance with too much water because water brings life. But
yeah, that might actually be a really good, because we've talked about transitions are not like flip the switch. It's more like, it's not like when you turn the lights on in the room. It's more like when the sun rises. It starts gradually. When would you say the day has begun and the night has ended? I can't really tell you that it was at 6:18 a.m. and that at 6:17 it was nighttime and at 6:19 it was daytime. It's a gradual process. So the flood would be a good transition marker for, a waypoint along the way.
And we have ways of like calculating where it's finally hit its balance, and we come up and we draw this pretend line, but it's kind of like an overlay. It's shades of gray.
Yeah, the reality is it's like trying to say, when does night start with sunset, or when does the day start with sunrise?
And that's why I try not to draw hard lines on these concepts, that I stay a little loose, and I'm saying it's close to this. Look for both these archetypes at this point, and look, the seasons changing. Same thing with our seasons. This whole thing is being taught, being discussed in the idea of these archetypal seasons.
So Age of Aries runs from perhaps Joseph in Egypt, plus or minus, down until I would argue Jesus Christ.
Yeah,
that brings in the end of the Age of Aries.
I have a friend that grew up from an older Jewish sect, and he says that. I asked him about the Abraham story, and he was saying, like, what if the lamb that was seen was Aries coming up on the horizon? And he brought up that there was like metaphors pointing to, like it was the Age of Aries at that point of that sacrifice happening.
Yeah, something to announce to at least the believing, if not the entire world, that there's been a transition.
Yeah.
And, the sacrifice of Jesus Christ, I think, is another transition point where that moves us to the age of Pisces.
As where he made an ascent into another world.
Yeah, a literal bodily ascent afterwards, coming out of the grave in defiance of death and hell and all of, final victory over sin and death, like, all of the Christian things that we've grown up our whole lives preaching and believing in.
Yeah, and then taking it fast forward to our time, this age is ending as there's an ascent into another world.
Yeah, ascent or, Pisces is also a descent.
It can be.
I would suggest that Facebook, TikTok, etc. are more of a descent than an ascent. But one little bit I wanted to, this is a passage from Malachi chapter 4 that I wanted to bounce off, because we were talking about the Age of Taurus. And some of the things in the scriptures call back to golden ages and call back to these other ages. So Malachi, you'll remember, you'd be forgiven for not remembering maybe, it's the last book in the Old Testament. And this particular passage is very famous, and it has a reference to the Age of Taurus buried within it. And I'll just go ahead and read it. It's very famous. It's been read many times by many, many preachers. For behold, the day is coming, burning like an oven, when all the arrogant and all the evildoers will be stubble. The day that is coming shall set them ablaze, says the Lord of hosts, so that it will leave them neither root nor branch. But you who fear my name, the Son of Righteousness, shall rise with healing in its wings. You shall go out leaping like calves from the stall, and you shall tread down the wicked, for they will be ashes under the soles of your feet. Okay? That reference to going out like calves from the stall, like that's saying, for you who are righteous in the great day of the Lord at the second coming, you who are righteous, and I hope that can include you, and I hope that can include me. I hope. For you, it can be like that golden age, that period of Adam, when Adam and Eve were here, that Edenic paradise on earth. You will go out like calves from the stall. Calves don't exit the stall in war and terror and fear and fright. They are calm and peaceful, and they go out to the pasture, and it's green and beautiful and calm and wonderful. And so, for you who are righteous, for you who fear my name, the Son of Righteousness shall rise with healing in its wings. That sounds awesome.
It sounds awesome, and I do like the metaphor how you tied in the calf into bringing in that, going back to the Garden of Eden type theme.
Yeah.
And I think there's a couple other things that are very cosmic in nature in the scripture here, is because it's bringing in the idea of canceling the wicked. And that is the idea of a council culture theme, a social construct of
canceling the wicked,
of the age of Aquarius, which we're in. Because when you get into scriptural prophecy, the metaphors and themes that they are bringing up in this day and age of the end times is a very Aquarian theme. Of the angel pouring out its vial, Aquarius is the water bearer pouring its bucket, its vial,
pouring the blessings and the cursings.
And Aquarius has two streams. One could be arguably being blessings and one being cursings, because it has a duality. But one thing to note in that idea of canceling the wicked, because that's the archetype of Aquarius. We've been talking about oppositions, and to look at their opposite also. And what is the opposite of Aquarius?
Let's see. The opposite of Aquarius would be Leo. So that would be the egomaniac, the king,
But Leo is considered
the real SOB,
and which is also like a quadrant. We're going to talk about that in one of the next lessons. But if you can look at the idea of the zodiac. And their quadrants, what it's all 90 degrees from, they all connect. And Taurus is one of the ones that connects to Aquarius. And what is in opposition, 180 degrees of of Aquarius is Leo, and Leo is the one that is like known for its fiery temperament. It is like the fixed fire. It is the middle of summer. It is the burning. And once again, the
day is coming that shall set them ablaze. Oh my goodness.
That is a Leo theme. And Jesus being born under the rising of the lion has that. He embodies that archetype of Jesus is coming.
So you heard it here first.
So
it's all right there in Malachi, and it's been there the whole time.
Yep.
Okay. Thanks for joining us. Remember to click the like button. Tell YouTube that you like this kind of content. Tell YouTube to recommend this kind of content to other people. Share this video with your friends. Subscribe. Do all the other YouTube things. Peace, everybody.